everybody. I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and you'll be very pleased to hear that I got an instruction to spend no more than 2 minutes on the introduction. It is my deep honor to be here to introduce Denis Duverne, who I'm sure those of you who know is a very willing medalist for the award because of his work in developing awareness, understanding, and informed opinion on global businesses throughout the world. It's my honor to have worked with Denis now for over 22 years, and I've seen very close his track record as a leader in financial services right across the world, in Europe, America, and in Asia. His global perspectives and his ability to build relationships throughout the world is, in my opinion, one of the key reasons why AXA today is the #1 insurance brand in the world, supporting 100 million clients across 64 countries. From the time that, thank you very much, my AXA colleagues here. From the time that Denis joined AXA in 1995, he's overseen operations in the US, in Europe, served as the head of finance strategy and operations, been a member of the management board, served as director and deputy chief executive officer, and of course, in 2016 was appointed group chairman of the AXA board. Denis' international leadership reaches beyond AXA. In 2014, he became a member of the Private Sector Advisory Group, which brings together international leaders of the private sector. It was co-founded in 1999 by the World Bank and the OECD, and this group's shared goal is to help developing countries improve their corporate governance. Those of us who know Denis will be in awe, as I am, of his intellectual curiosity and his ability to grasp very complex businesses. It's been amazing to me, Denis, as a CEO who's worked for you, that how humbling it is that you seem to know more about my businesses than I do, whether I'm in Hong Kong, in Japan, or here in the US. But I think what's equally memorable for Denis is his championing of important social initiatives inside and outside AXA, such as advancing women leaders, promoting LGBT and diversity causes throughout the world, and socially responsible investing. He's been a real champion for businesses investing in emerging markets, and in particular in Africa and Asia, and I admire his commitment to help those emerging economies while seeding businesses for our company. I have to say on a personal note that working with Denis has been a true privilege. He's been a real great friend and trusted mentor for me throughout my time within AXA. And this evening, I'm honored to introduce this year's Foreign Policy Association Medal recipient, Mr. Denis Duverne.
Thank you very much, Mark, for these very kind comments. I would like to first thank Noel Latif, the President of the Foreign Policy Association, and thank the FPA for awarding me this medal. I also want to thank all my AXA colleagues who have come numerous this evening to participate in this event. I will try to be brief because I know that we are well beyond the time of an American dinner. So I'd like again to thank the FPA for their accomplishments over the last 100 years and wish that they can continue for another 100 years. For the next 8 minutes, I think it's the awarded time, I would like to share with you my thoughts on the current global landscape, the good achievements and prospects, but also the challenges we collectively face going forward in the context of broad societal and technological disruptions that bring both opportunities and risks. On the positive side, I'd like to note three main points. Global economic growth continues at a solid pace. The IMF has just recently increased its assessment of 2017 to 3.7%, and they plan 3.8% for 2019. The pickup in growth has been broad-based. 179 out of the 192 countries in the world, representing 99% of GDP, are growing simultaneously. There are especially upside surprises in Asia, with India growing at an unprecedented pace, but also in Europe, which has been struggling in the years of the euro crisis, which has seen a growth accelerated to 2.4% in 2017, and which should remain above 2% in the next several years. Unemployment has decreased across the world, especially in the US at 4.1%, but also in Europe, which is still close to 9%, but slowly decreasing. The second positive point I'd like to make is that violent death as a percentage of total deaths have continued to decrease. The rate of people violently killed has decreased in 2016 from 8.12 people per 100,000 to 7.5 people per 100,000. The deaths from war is now 4 times lower than in the 80s. However, even if those numbers are positive, the rate of homicide has increased for the first time in 2016 since 2004. This fact underlines the challenge that even our developed and peaceful societies face when dealing with domestic violence prevention. It also reminds us that in the last years, our democracies have had to learn once again how to deal with fear and terror. Third positive point, the number of people living below the poverty level has declined substantially over the last 20-30 years. Even if the level of extreme poverty at $1.90 per day is still unacceptable, major improvements have been made in recent years. The number of people living below that level of extreme poverty was 35.3% of the population in 1990. It has now come to 10.7% in 13, which is the last figure available, and should be effectively below 10% now. This represents 767 million in 2013, when it represented 1.1 billion in 1990, at a time when population has moved from 5.3 billion to 7.2 billion. Fourth positive point, technological progress allows us to hope seriously that damages to the environment can be cured during this century. This statement is a bit bold, but I believe that we are seeing fast progress in green technologies with vertical farming, innovative wind turbines, solar roof tiles, and digital solutions which eliminate paper, electric cars, smart homes. I will not belabor that point. Let's now move quickly to the negative developments. Economic growth has been artificially supported by an increasing level of debt, planting the seeds for the next financial crisis. On one hand, you can see that some structural weaknesses have been resolved after the 2007-2009 crisis. But in 2017, the global debt had hit an all-time high of $233 trillion, 320% of global GDP, versus 280% in 2007. Some countries have done structural reforms, but in Europe, we see that countries like France have been slow to adopt those structural reforms. And Italy, same thing. The lack of budgetary coordination in Europe is still an issue, and even though the worst has been avoided with the euro financial crisis in 2010-2011, there is still a lot to do to resolve those structural imbalances. And with the end of QE happening in the US now and happening soon in Europe, we are deeply cognizant of the fact that our central banks will need to be particularly able to withstand another financial crisis as the very easy monetary conditions disappear. The second worrying point is that the democratic rule has ceased to progress around the world. According to Freedom House, 2017 is the lowest point in more than a decade concerning freedom and democracy. 71 countries have seen a net decline in political rights and civil liberties, and 37% of people around the world are considered as not free. It's the 12th consecutive year of decline in global freedom. During these 12 years, 113 countries declined and only 62 have improved. Democracy is under pressure all over the world. Some countries seemed promising 10 years ago, such as Turkey or Hungary, and have seen a reversal to an authoritarian regime. Powerful democracies have seen social and economic disparities and partisan fragmentation. And this has led to the rise in populist movements across these countries. In Latin America, the humanitarian crisis continues to push citizens to seek refuge in neighboring countries. Brazil is still investigating major political leaders' corruption. And African countries such as Congo and Sudan are still suffering civil wars. Third worrying issue is the nuclear power has been spreading to more numerous states so that the traditional rules of deterrence may no longer apply. It is important to recall that only 5 countries are officially considered as nuclear weapon states: the US, Russia, France, the UK, and China, in the context of the Treaty of Non-Proliferation. However, it is well known that 4 more countries are detaining nuclear weapons: Israel, Pakistan, India, and North Korea. And the situation keeps deteriorating from that standpoint. This definitely increases the risk of war and the risk of the use of so-called tactical nuclear weapons. Fourth point, economic growth in the last 30 years has led to a rise of inequality. And with the deindustrialization of a number of regions, we talk about lost territories in mature markets, leading to a rise in populism, isolationism, protectionism, and post-truth politics. In spite of the economic certainty that all these new trends will hamper economic growth, this is clearly worrying. And we've seen recently with Brexit that a decision which was clearly harmful to all participants in Europe could be taken with the use of deliberate lies, like the idea that £350 million a week would be given back to the UK after Brexit. There is clearly, with new technology, a risk of job polarization, which is visible in all mature countries. Employment in non-routine occupations, either cognitive or manual services, have been increasing steadily for several decades, while employment in routine occupations, like office occupations, construction, transportation, production, has been mostly stagnant and is very exposed to outsourcing or elimination through automation. This phenomenon has been accelerating in recent years and could fuel further tensions. Fifth worrying point, promises of science and technology could go wrong with increasing biological experiments and transhumanism. Clearly, science and its applications can solve many issues and give people the possibility to live a better life. The promises of artificial intelligence, biotechnologies, need to be explored, and innovation should therefore continue to be actively encouraged. At the same time, one should not lose the ethical angle without which we would stop being human, if I were to speak bluntly. This starts with the very case of biological experiments, which are loosely regulated in many jurisdictions and not really democratically debated. In the most extreme version of that future, which is called transhumanism, the three fundamental pillars of humanity will be changed: body, thought, and behavior. So with that, what can we do? I'd like to conclude my remarks by telling you that I believe that there is a new role for large global corporations to contribute to a better world. In this world of both opportunities and risk that is quickly evolving with social aspirations and technological changes, global corporations, and this was said by one of the previous speakers, can contribute both through corporate social responsibility and dealing with emerging customers. At AXA, we've been deeply engaged in those issues. We do so in the field of green finance. We, as an investor, we measure the carbon footprint of our investments, and we have stopped investing in and sold our coal-related assets, invested in green bonds and green technologies, and we have also established global partnerships with the United Nations around resilient construction, around women's financial education, and around the impacts of the change in weather patterns on the poor populations. The second area where we've been active has been in ensuring emerging customers, which is the category of, I would say, low to middle income customers in emerging markets, which were denied the access to insurance because of high distribution costs. These people, when faced with an accident, a health issue, or pregnancy, are pushed back into poverty if they are not insured. We have been developing a line of dedicated insurance solutions to our emerging customers, which now protects more than 10 million customers around the world. We have been rethinking the concept of insurance for these people with digital and mobile solutions and simplified products with no exclusion clauses. I will leave you with these final thoughts, and I would like to thank you once again for having me tonight and giving me this award. Thank you.